rain, hung from the trees, and I swear I heard the voices singing to me. Singing to the rhythm of the beat of my feet, and I swear I heard the voices singing to me. Keep on, keep on, keep on, I'm still in the highway. Oh, I wanna be out of here by now. Still in the highway. My mind's running on a wheel, and I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know why.
Yeah, we're going to Hollywood today, kids. Yeah, well, in a bit, because there's 3 videos to go through for this lecture, I'm afraid. This is a monster. If I was doing this, like 2-hour lecture theatre, it'd be like 80 slides to go through. It'd be like bang, 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 bang. So at least with the videos, I can break it up. So I'm hoping to do these in reasonable 20-minute blocks, I'm hoping. So yeah, it's quite a lot to watch this week, but hopefully it's interesting because we are with a medium that hasn't died. The cinema is still with us, obviously. Now, what is important for us to note, and we'll get into this in one of the seminars, is that the cinema isn't with us in the form that I'm going to talk about in these videos, definitely. Cinema has mutated and changed and become digital and so on, and we need to reflect on that. But we're going to get into the birth of cinema, how it came about, and really bring ourselves, for the first time in this module, up into the 20th century. We've kind of been skirting around the 20th century for a little while now. Kind of got there in the photography one with Kodak and Eastman. I'm going to go back to Eastman in this video, funnily enough. But we're hitting the 20th century now and the major forms of the 20th century. So really what I want to achieve with these videos, these 3 videos, is look at the birth of cinema, really from its invention to the end of World War I. That's the period I want to cover, and how it established itself as a successful broadcast entertainment industry. So it goes from a medium to an industry, and it was on an industrial scale. I'm largely going to focus on the United States here. I'm not going to focus too much on other countries because even today, the United States is the most important in terms of its cultural aspects, cinema system that we experience. It's not the largest by any means, but it is culturally and in terms of global culture the most important form of cinema still. So we're in the 20th century. Okay, well, we're not, but you know, in this module we're starting in the 20th century now. So in the 20th century we see 4 dominant forms of media emerge: cinema, radio, newspapers, and television. And I'm going to do lectures on all of those. You know, could argue that computers come through, but really the significance of computers is into the 21st century rather than the 20th century. They are hugely significant in the 20th century also, but for the purposes of this module, we'll concentrate on these 4. These all became not just mediums, but massive industries, developing and following what we call the broadcast model. So this is the broadcast era of media. And you know from MS100 actually that I've quite critical, not of the broadcast era, but of the retention of theory in media studies, which was based in the broadcast era. However, it is extremely important for us to understand how the broadcast era laid the groundwork for what we experience today. Are these notions of mass production for mass distribution and mass consumption, which is stuff I would have gone through in MS100 with regards to the Frankfurt School, for example, how these came into being, because it is still the logic that underpins a great deal of media in what years? 2020 I'm talking now. You're watching this in 21, but yeah, time travel, people. Yeah, but you know, this, and you know, I'm conducting broadcast right now, right? You know, I'm sitting here in my little square, you know, PowerPoint here, and I'm in my square, and I'm broadcasting at you. I'm talking at you. I'm not even just talking at you, I'm talking down to you, yeah, because I'm not showing you the correct respect that you deserve as individuals. Of course, I'm patronizing you on a huge level. Can you not hear it in my voice? The broadcast era, it still lives, right? I'm broadcasting now. Television still broadcasts at us, you know. For example, you know, some text online, if we don't have the right to reply to them, then we are being broadcast at. So this era is incredibly important for us to understand. Now, in terms of cinema, we've covered some of the groundwork for this already in how cinema emerged. Obviously, in the 19th century, there was a rich image culture. And we looked at it specifically in terms of the daguerreotype and so on, with regards to the development of photography. But there were other things going on, and we also looked at it in terms of the panorama and its forms. Painted effect shows, photographic images, magic lantern shows also existed. So this is a magic lantern that I've got in this illustration here. Various optical toys. So there were the precursors of the moving image emerged in the 19th century, but there was nothing like the moving image on screen until right at the end of that century. Now, cinema needed a certain number of things to move on from photography. Firstly, you needed an understanding of the science of perception and how there is a persistence of vision over time. So, as in optical toys like the one I have here. Now, if you spin that, you will get a persistence of a moving image over time, as each image, which is all slightly different to one another, spins at a certain rate, and you look through the slats there, you will see a moving image over time. That persistence of vision was needed, and an understanding of that perceptually was needed for cinema to work. But much more important perhaps than that was high-speed photography. Now, as photography developed in the 19th century, you started to see new developments within the form itself, which could allow for the capture of many instances, very, very high-speed picture taking of the same movement over time, which when replayed could make it look like we're looking at a moving image. So dry plate glass photography, which was invented by Maddox in 1871, allowed for much faster exposures onto a particular capturing material, and therefore was the first step towards being able to take several images of the same thing at the same time, so you capture very slight motion across a very short period of time. Remember that photography, when it first started, especially with the daguerreotype, people had to remain very still in order for the image to be fixed. What we have with cinema is the complete opposite problem. You don't want people to stay still. You want people to move, actually, and you want to capture that in a different way. So if you like, the science and engineering problem here is the complete opposite of what was trying to be done in photography. Now, the improvement in cameras and the improvement in this kind of technique, like the one that Maddox put together, starts to move photography itself towards capturing moving images and being able to replay those moving images. Very famous English photographer actually was key to this, Muybridge, famous for his motion studies. What he did was take very quick high-speed images of moving objects like a galloping horse, and then display them very quickly after one another. So it created the illusion that you were looking at a continuous moving image rather than many still images which had been captured very close to one another. So he established the principle that this could be a way of doing this. So he didn't just do it with horses, but also with motion studies of human beings as well. Displaying some of the principles that were available at that point in time to actually display moving images. What's problematic here is Muybridge's technique, although it displays the principles really of how cinema still works in essence. If you capture it in film, it's the same kind of principle that's going on. But doing it in terms of photography in this way means you can only capture a very small amount of time. You're talking about huge numbers of photographs stacking up. You've got costs involved with development, and you've got various complexities involved with how many images you can take at one particular time. So these are very short captures of images, a couple of seconds at most. You also needed an effective carrying material, and we kind of got into this a little bit with photography when we were talking about, how photography boomed when celluloid film was used. And as you can see, Eastman's development of celluloid film becomes incredibly important in the development of cinema. Celluloid starts being refined for photographic use in the late 19th century. As we know, 1899, Eastman introduced the commercial film into photography and transformed photography as an industry. And by 1891, film was being supplied to Thomas Edison for his cinema experiments, which I'll come to shortly. So the ideal material to be used for cinema, celluloid film, was discovered actually in a different medium altogether, photography, but it could be transported over to cinema in order to be used for this purpose. Finally, you needed camera and shutter technology. Motion pictures cameras had to be invented, basically. They had to be invented from scratch because they were doing such a different job than the cameras that were available at the time. What you needed was something that could take successive high-speed photographic images on celluloid film very, very successfully, requiring moving and fixing each frame for an image. And you might have several frames per second. So you needed to invent this from scratch almost. Sorry, and I did say finally, but that there is another thing. Another thing for cinema to work, and it's something that we don't count on very often, is you need somewhere to show it. Now, cinema is not going to work in the home environment, right? Not everyone in the world is going to buy a very, very expensive camera. You need somebody to display this. Now, we've seen some of the principles of exhibition with regards to the panorama in the earlier part of the 19th century. So the underlying principles of exhibition already exist. But the first successful cinematic process was influenced actually by the rise of musical parlours a long time after the panorama sort of disappeared and stopped becoming a popular form. Although musical parlours themselves took a lot of lessons from the panorama and its success. Edison, again, with his invention of the phonograph in 1877, sort of started this process, and it started the idea of refinement of process as well as competitors emerged and he had to improve. What I mean by a phonograph is this: a coin-operated device, which you would put a coin in and then use the crank there on the right-hand side of the device to listen to music, speeches, spoken word bits, poetry, etc. Became very, very popular in bars, railway stations. There were, traveling fairs which would carry these around, and people would really enjoy listening to them. Very successful novelty sort of act. So this was Edison's first movement into the public entertainment arena, and these raked in a fair bit of money. People would put their coins in, listen to this little thing. Somebody else would come and go, "Whoa, this is amazing." It was a singular experience. You had to put your head quite close to that speaker so you could listen to it. So it wasn't a shared experience, although you could have the same thing and talk about it afterwards. But this prompted the idea that there's a big market here for this kind of entertainment. Edison was really interested in these questions around moving pictures. In terms of the musical parlor, entrepreneurs collected them in singular sort of shops, public engagement places, arcades, storefront parlours with rows and rows of machines and listening tubes. They were very cheap entertainment for mass audience in the city. So that's why I say they bear close resemblance to the panorama. Again, the panorama was cheap entertainment for a mass audience. So were these. It was offering something different. It was offering audio, which was a new development in terms of media technology. And it laid down some of the principles of what would happen in early cinema as well. So parlours, they actually became increasingly luxuriously decorated. They became, there was classy parlours. They were very much open to passing trades. You could just pop into one. And new recordings released continuously continued to bring audiences back. And that final point is really, really important. What the developers of early cinema noted from the parlours was that you had to keep it fresh. You couldn't just have the same recordings over and over again. You needed to have a continuous stream of new media material in order for audiences to be captivated. Just give people the same thing over and over again, people would get bored and they would stop coming. So you needed to have a system where you were not just making these machines and making these recordings, but continually making new ones also. And so the birth of an industry there is not just in the hardware, but also the software that these machines used. The actual content of the machines is really, really important. And so some of the underlying principles of cinema are already been established here. Cinema would be pretty crap if all films, no films have been made after 1950. Loads of films were made before. We're never probably going to be able to watch all of them. But you want to see fresh, you want to see new, you want to see, new releases. You don't want to just see the same stuff over and over again. Well, those kind of principles were noted during the rise of the musical parlour in the 1870s and 1880s. So the next novelty to come on, this is Thomas Edison himself. Some of the things that Edison was responsible for: the quadruplex telegraph, the electric light, the electric system, the phonograph, all at his Menlo Park Centre. Edison was a prolific inventor of many, many things. For our purposes, purposes here, we want to look at what Edison was looking for in terms of his next novelty act, and he wanted to tap into moving images. He wanted a machine to do for the eye what the phonograph did for the ear. So he wanted to provide a singular experience that we see moving images in a new way. Worked with Dixon to record and show moving photographs, basically. So he invented a machine where photographs could be laid out in a particular way, where in motion, it would appear like they're moving images. So in 1891, he created a working camera, a kinetograph, and a viewer for this. It was called a kinetoscope. 1892's kinetoscope, a single person viewer where, as you can see at the top of that image there, you basically bent over the machine and looked into a peephole lens. You can see the film in there. So there's one strip of film lit from behind with an electric light, also invented by Edison, and could be coin operated and could run automatically. So you had a machine here which basically was fully automated. You just kind of put a coin in, look down, and you saw the film transferred across these sort of rollers and backlit, so it looked like a moving image up to you. Now, what's important to note here is, of course, the kinetoscope is not cinema. Cinema is a display, yeah? Cinema is projected. This isn't a projection of anything. You only one person at a time can see it. Yes, there's a projection principle with the light, but it is not being projected outwards onto anything. It's a very limited scope. But we see some of the precursor elements here in terms of moving image, in terms of using film to illustrate an image moving over time, which would become the staple of how cinema actually developed. And this is what looking at a kinetoscope looked like. Okay, you can see the electric light in there. The guy is bending down, looking into the viewer. You know, and he's probably watching something really, really exciting. Kinetoscope films were very, very short and very, very simple. But what you've got to remember is nothing like this had ever been seen before. So although they were short and simple, they were revolutionary in terms of nobody had ever seen anything on this scale previously. Edison noted that, you know, you needed software, as I said, for these things, so he began making a number of kinetoscope films. So very short scenes capturing largely natural phenomena, like this classic of the genre, recording of a sneeze. You're watching a guy sneeze, basically, and it's a huge hit. Wow, that guy sneezed. Yeah. You've got to note as well, of course, no sound with the kinetoscope as well. So heavily sort of action-based pictures like this, really went down well with the public. He did daft things like boxing cats, sounds like the sort of lame stuff boomers watch on, Facebook. Music hall and circus acts were very, very popular in this format. I mean, these things suck, right? That's just a dude flexing his muscles. That's just a lady doing some kind of dance. I mean, they're not great entertainment, but people, again, I'll go back to the point that people have never seen this kind of thing before. So, give people a break, He even established his own cinema, his own studio to do these kind of things. The Black Maria studio, which opened in 1893, was really the world's first film studio, with a skylight and a turntable, and absolutely hammering out material from this place, really, really doing it. And with celluloid film, of course, you could record once and then reproduce over and over again. So an important principle of mass distribution was established with the kinetoscope. You didn't have to get the guy sneezing and say, okay, John, good sneeze, man. We're going to do it again because we're going to get another film out now. Come on, John, get that sneeze on again. No. John sneezed once and you could reproduce that as many times as you liked on celluloid film, different pieces of celluloid film. So you have one of the important principles of mass production of cinema was established with the kinetoscope. Kinetoscope parlors, the first one opened in April 1894 in New York City, which had 10 machines in 2 rows, 25 cents for 5 machines. So you paid your quarter and you could use 5 different machines during that time. Bargain, right? And it was a bargain and it raked in money. People loved it, You might have only been in there for 5 machines. You probably weren't even there for 5 minutes. looking at these different things. But you paid your quarter, you had your 5 minutes of entertainment, and people queued up around the block for this. This was huge. Massive success. Open throughout other cities through 1895. Now, there was a problem with keeping the audience, as film production was actually much slower than the demand, and most of the stuff was aimed at the largest audiences, as it was perceived, boys and men, so it wasn't really very popular with women. But you even got to, by 1895, the idea of showing 6 1-minute rounds of a boxing match. So we even get the first sports recorded and broadcast outwards in 1894, 1895. The Leonard Cushing fight from 1894 was recorded, transferred into the kinetoscope, and people could relive the fight in these things. So you can get sport being important. These are really important precursors to how cinema begins. But I'll get, in the next video, I'm going to get right into cinema perhaps as we understand it more today.